They've finally done it. After decades of missteps and one great but thoroughly Americanized light novel adaptation, Robert Rodriguez and James Cameron have cracked the code and captured almost everything that I love about anime in a Hollywood blockbuster for the first time. Well, the first time if we don't count Scott Pilgrim, which is all around perfect, and Speed Racer, which didn't quite nail it but came pretty damn close. But that's a whole other tangent and not the point today. The point is, with Alita Battle Angel, Hollywood has finally come out with a manga adaptation that really, truly gets it. This is the movie experience I hoped to have when watching Ghost in the Shell and Dragon Ball Evolution way back in the day that I never thought I'd actually see realized. A genuine passion project from people who care about the source material with a fleshed out, lived in, believable world, upbeat, lovable anime style heroes, and jaw dropping action scenes like only $200 million and what a digital special effects team can make happen. And Fox has kinda thrown it out into the middle of February to die, hence the title of this video. If you love anime, you need to see Alita Battle Angel. For two reasons. Firstly, though it's not perfect, this is exactly the kind of movie that you have been asking for years. And if you have any love for the gleefully fantastical heights that anime can reach, you are going to have a blast watching it. And secondly, since this thing made a good return at the box office, it for sure sends a message to studios. We weebs notice when you get things right, and we will dip into our Dakimakura funds to reward you for it. Thankfully it didn't bomb, despite looking like it would since it was released at such a risky time in 2019. It's a big budget cyberpunk movie, and a lot of the mainstream movie critics don't entirely get the whole anime thing. But the results are sending a good message. Which is why I'm front loading this plea to see the dang movie before I finish this video on it for the sake of anime's future in Hollywood. I'm really glad to see this movie do well, so if I convince you to go see it or rewatch it and you'll like it as much as I do, consider telling your friends to see it too, or sending them this to watch it if you don't want to explain it for yourself. But I'm getting a bit ahead myself, aren't I? I suppose I've actually got to do my job and convince you to watch it first, so let's get into it. The first sticking point that I see come up on Twitter and elsewhere whenever anyone talks about this film seems to be the visuals. More specifically, the look of Alita herself, with her big anime eyes and doll-like proportions. She looks weird, people say. It's too deep in the uncanny valley, I just can't get into it. And I think that's kind of a shallow way to approach media, but I don't live inside your head. I can't tell you that you're wrong about what will and won't bother you when you're watching a movie. I can tell you that everyone saying the film lands in the uncanny valley is using that term incorrectly because it refers exclusively to things that try and fail to pass for humans, and Alita's exaggerated features are designed specifically to highlight her inhumanity as a cyborg and avoid venturing into that territory in the first place. But that kind of misses the point, and it doesn't help if you still think she looks creepy or goofy to take the film seriously. What I can say though is that I was right there with you and laughing and cringing a bit when I first saw the teaser for this movie. I straight up rolled my eyes the first time I saw this character design. But when I was sitting in the theater after the first minute or two, it didn't bother me at all. In fact, I quickly came to love it. Alita is played by the talented Rosa Salazar and animated by the equally talented artist at Weta, has remarkable emotional range. It's easy to empathize with her as a character, and thanks to top-notch compositing, just as easy to believe that she's physically there with the other actors in my opinion. She's one of the most convincing special effects creations ever put to film. Unsurprisingly, since this is a James Cameron production, and he pretty much wrote the book on integrating CGI into live-action footage. Alita's constant presence in turn makes it easier to accept the film's more outlandish and creative cyborg designs, and helps to bridge the gap between the live-action hybrid scenes and the full-blown CGI set pieces in such a way that you're never left thinking, well, that looks fake. And that might seem like a really negligible thing, but it's arguably the most important trick that this film employs, because while it is a good movie in many other respects, it's those wild character designs and the insane action scenes that make it worth watching. With gravity-defying martial arts, crazy weapons, and brutal moments of violence, it's amazing what you can get away with using a cast of blue-blooded cyborgs. Alita goes full anime with its action scenes and succeeds like nothing before it. I was more than a bit worried by the PG-13 rating going into this, but as soon as I saw Alita dropkick a lady's head into a concrete wall and then watch the rest of her body limply fall away from it, my fears immediately vanished. The major antagonist Gruishka and Zapan stand out the most, but from the old dude with the robot dogs, to a chain whip lady, to the big guy with buzzsaw arms, every cyborg in the film has a distinctive, memorable design and unique way of fighting, and the film uses every last one of them to full effect in a wide range of equally memorable, visceral fight scenes. From that first tense back alley dust-up to the chaotic bar fight, to the intense BattleBots death race basketball antics of the Motorball Arena toward the end, no two fights in the film are the same, and each one will get your pulse pounding as you watch it. For the action alone, it is well worth seeing this on the biggest screen you can and in 3D, so long as that doesn't turn your stomach. Even when the action isn't turned up to 11, this is a beautiful film to look at with striking shot compositions that look good in 2D, but that are also designed to take full advantage of stereoscopic depth. And it's not just the VFX that's nice to look at. The costuming and physical set design is on point, creating the impression when the camera gets close enough of a gritty, lived-in world that you can really touch a nice contrast to the glitz of the motorball arena and the distant, overly pristine, floating city of Zalem, and the script pulls equal weight in bringing that world to life. Alita's setting is complex with a lot of history behind it that could easily form the full plot of a different franchise. I mean, it's set in a sprawling slum town under a city on a space elevator platform, which is the last remaining bastion of cybernetically enhanced humanity, following a 300-year-old apocalypse which was brought on by a war between Earth and its Martian colonies. There's a lot to unpack here, and many films will struggle with conveying that information to the audience, but Alita is comfortable with drip feeding it organically and trusting you to piece it together yourself. And speaking as someone who's read only a few chapters of the manga before going to see it, I had no trouble at all in following what was going on. This is what good world building in film looks like. To me, as a big fan of sci-fi and cyberpunk in particular, it's really important to get that right, and I'm happy that Alita pulled it off. That said, a strong, beautifully rendered world can only carry a film so far. Alita is a grand production in terms of technological scope and spectacle, but it's also a very small and personal story about a few people whose lives are very tightly intertwined. Its stakes do concern the fate of its whole world in the abstract, but the big world-shaking events happened 300 or more years ago, and they take a backseat to the personal motivations of Alita, Ito, Hugo, Shirin, and the rest of the film's cast. And in light of that, there really could not be two people more perfectly suited to bringing this film to life than James Cameron, arguably the most ambitious man in Hollywood, and Robert Rodriguez, a disciplined master of small-scale productions who knows how to get every penny's worth from a tight budget. Rodriguez took an epic script that Cameron had been struggling to shave down for 20 years and turned it into something filmable without sacrificing an ounce of its fusion-powered heart. The story of an abandoned cyborg girl with incredible hidden talents fighting her way through a broken world is clearly one that spoke to both filmmakers, and both were clearly passionate about doing it justice. That said, they didn't do a perfect job of balancing all of the film's different demands. If there's one thing I definitely can fault Alita Battle Angel for, it's that it moves a little too quickly in trying to cover a huge swath of the manga's plot. It's not rushed per se, the plot is easy to follow and the main characters have strong, clearly defined arcs, but it does take some shortcuts and there are a few moments where you can clearly see the stitches around the missing scene or two. The jump from Alita's argument with Doc Ito to the barroom brawl from the trailers is probably the most jarring of the bunch, and as a result of the truncated time frame of the movie, Alita's blossoming romance with Hugo falls more than a little flat. We see all of the beats along the way, but the transition from longing looks to scandalous hand-holding to smooching feels very abrupt, and judging from the dialogue, it seems like there may have been at least one scene cut where Alita's lack of a sense of touch gets in the way or something like that. Hugo himself is probably the weakest, most cliched character of the bunch. Thankfully, while that relationship is an important emotional thread for the movie, it's not the only one. Alita's surrogate father-daughter relationship with Dr. Ito, as well as her personal journey to understand who she is, both work really well. And I think it's a testament to how well Alita in particular is written, that in spite of my relative ambivalence toward Hugo, I was still invested enough to care about her feelings for him and how they affected her arc. Alita has a charming, lovable, anime protagonist optimism about her that you rarely see in Hollywood movies, and it's such a delight to watch her grow. Admittedly, they kind of cheat in making her appealing by having her shower affection on the cutest little three-legged dog that you have ever seen at the start of the movie, as well as that chocolate scene, which is just emotional manipulation at its finest. But the film earns your attachment to her with every scene after that. And without spoiling things, there's enough context provided around the emotional climax of her and Hugo's story that it has a satisfying impact whether or not you actually care about him. I'm sure the kind of people who care about that kind of thing can find plenty to nitpick in this film's plot, but they get to the core of its narrative absolutely right, with wildly varying sci-fi concepts at play and a script that moves briskly from scene to scene. Alita could very easily be a jumbled mess, but it manages to come together into a cohesive whole, largely because the motivations of heroes and villains alike are all tied together with a strong underlying theme of identity. Alita is driven by a need to know where she came from and who she was before Dr. Ito found her, and once she finds out she has to reconcile that knowledge with who she's become since waking up, that conflict is embodied fittingly in the subplot about her body, which without spoiling too much, concludes with her rejecting the identity that Ito has projected onto her and becoming the person she always felt she was. Ito, for his part, had long lost his sense of self after losing his daughter and only starts to find it again through caring for the little angel. But it takes understanding the differences between her and his daughter to understand how he himself has changed. Meanwhile, his wife Shirin went down a much darker path after losing that part of her identity, trying to recapture her lost self-image as a citizen of Zalem, And she's only redeemed when she remembers that before all of that, she is a mother and a doctor first. Hugo defines himself through his dream of escaping Iron City to live in Zalem. But as he gets closer to Alita, he begins to question whether that dream is what he really wants and whether the compromises he's made to achieve it are worthwhile or if they've changed him. Even Zapan, who would otherwise feel like a second stringer B-plot villain, plays on this theme through his obsession with his image and the look of his cyborg body, and especially his face. And part of what makes the film's shadowy main villain Nova so frightening is the way that he steals and erases the identities of his servants in order to enact his will. Through these and other characters, Alita explores how our self-image can change with experience, how other people can reshape it, and how losing it or living in a body that doesn't match it can negatively affect us. And it does so much more effectively than 2017's similarly themed Ghost in the Shell without explaining a word of it. I'm not saying that Alita is the most brilliant movie in the world by any stretch of the imagination, but anyone who says that it's all flash and no substance was simply not paying attention when they watched it. And I'd wager most of the critics saying that have probably never seen an anime before, because in the tradition of many great anime, a lot of this information is delivered and a lot of those themes are explored through the flashy, stylistic elements and even through the bombastic action scenes. Which is why if you're the kind of person who likes watching my videos or who likes anime in general, I really think that you should give this film a shot. It feels like a proper big screen translation, not just of the slick aesthetics and crazy high concepts that we love in anime and manga, but of the underlying storytelling sensibilities and approaches to crafting characters that make us love them in the first place. And if we collectively made it a hit not only domestically, but globally as well, that will raise the odds that we get to see more movies like it in the future. Also, I really want to lead it, in particular to score a sequel because it ends on a bit of a cliffhanger, which I know might throw some of you off, but they do resolve every vital plot thread before that point, so the film still feels satisfying and self-contained at its conclusion, and that's really the best option they had. The Alita manga is far too long to cover in one movie no matter how much you cut, and in my opinion, it's good that they left this open for a continuation instead of trying to cobble together a bones ending for it. And you know what? If you do see it and you come away just dying to know what happens next, you can always read the manga. Let me know in the comments below what you thought of Alita Battle Angel if you saw it, and if you read the manga, how do you think it holds up as an adaptation? While you're down there, consider gently pressing that subscribe and like buttons. Also be sure to check out my other videos as well. Anyways, I'm Joseph A. Ramos, and see you in the next video.